Welcome to your Hello World project, the first step of full Python 3. If you ever can't find this page, you go to Raspberry Pi Projects, click on Pathways, go to Python, and it's level 1 in the first project, Hello Worlds. So to get started, we are going to click Use the Code Editor. The Raspberry Pi Foundation has created their own built-in text editor, which is awesome because we have project instructions on the left, we have our code editor in the middle, and we have the text output on the right. We are going to click Log In to save. If you do not want to make an account, you'll do all your work here, and at the end of the period, you'll go to CodeHS, click on plus, make a Python 3 sandbox, call this, for example, the Hello World project. Now you can do your project in this sandbox. It will work just as well. It'll also be at the end what you submit because you can share this and I get to have the link to your code. We're starting by using a function called the print function, which is able to output strings, which is a way of saying a word or a number to the screen. To start, we're going to type the function print followed by a set of parentheses to say hello to the screen. So every time you notice under the black code editor, if there is a line of code that is highlighted, that is the thing that you are going to be adding to the middle where you are writing code. So it says, put code to run under here. We're going to type out prints, and then after that we have a parentheses. We have the letter F, which is for F string. And then we put an apostrophe, capital H-E-L-O. When you type an opening bracket, the code editor will automatically add a closing bracket. This also happens when you type an opening apostrophe. So as I was typing this, print, as soon as I put the opening parenthesis, it also added in that closing parenthesis. Then I typed F apostrophe. You notice it typed both the opening and the closing one. And I could type capital H hello in there. And when I click it, we get the text output, hello. So the print function is able to print out whatever the string, the set of words or numbers, onto the right-hand side. If you have an error, just make sure that you've typed the code exactly as it is written there. When you're moving on to the next step, you have this little progress bar at the bottom. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 steps. Next page. We have currently finished step number 1. We click the arrow to the next page. Variable is used to store values such as text or numbers. Choosing a good name for it makes it easier to remember. So currently there are 3 variables in our program. There is one called worlds, where we have the 3 world emojis, Python, and fire. So we can click onto the next page and see that if we want to use those variables and print them out to our text output, we can change our code so that print also contains the contents of the world variable. You can do that by adding the variable name in curly brackets. I'm going to click after hello, add a space, then I'm going to type in the word worlds. I have another curly bracket, there's my apostrophe, and there is my parenthesis. So I'm going to run that, and now in my text output, I get hello worlds. So tip, the F character inside lets you easily print variables along with strings of text. Another way that you could do that is if I printed out, I had the phrase hello, and then after this 2 apostrophes, which creates a string, I could put a comma, and then I could type out my variable, and it would do the same thing. The difference is, if I had a very long sentence, it's a lot easier to use an F string so that my variables are able to be spread throughout the program. So if I continue to type, hello world, this is the beginning of a story about Python. And notice I'm putting this inside those curly brackets, and I want to talk to you about, and then I have fire, so I could add in the word fire. And now I have this sentence, hello world, this is the beginning of a story about Python, and I want to talk to you about fire. If I wanted to do that same thing without it being an F string, it's a little more complicated. I have to say hello, this is a variable, so I have to put the word world, then I have to put another comma, another set of apostrophes to make it a string again, and say, you can see this is getting long, and then that's Python, then I'm going to continue typing. F strings are useful in that I can just have the whole thing be one sentence without spacing it out with that comma. So for the rest of what we're doing, we're using F strings so we can create our print statement all having one sentence. It's really useful. You can easily print variables along with strings of text. Next step for this project is we are going to say, we're going to get rid of most of this, prints, parentheses, F string, apostrophe, welcome to, and then I'm going to add a variable in Python, end curly brackets, and run. I have now the statement, welcome to Python. So I've now printed out 2 print functions. You kind of get a good practice using f-strings and combining strings, which is just text or numbers, with variables, which is a saved value. The world is our saved value, and we also use Python as a saved value. When we say Python, we'll see this. Okay, so we've practiced using the print function. Let's move on to the second part of the project. Operators is essentially math. In Python, you can work with numbers and dates. You can use arithmetic operators like plus and minus, and multiplication, division, or even using exponents. To do that, we're going to use it in combination with our print function. Another f-string, so we're going to say print parentheses f-string, curly bracket, Python to print out a variable, which is going to give the emoji because it's storing that value up there, then is good at maths. Now this company is British, so they like to say the word math, but I'm going to rebel and say is good at math, exclamation mark. We'll see that that code gets written out. I'm going to drop down to the next line, print f-string, and then in my curly brackets, I can do any math operation I'd like. So if I said 13 times 10, and I can run that, and I'll get 130. Make sure that you have your curly brackets, because if you forget that, you are going to simply be printing out 13 times 10, literally, as opposed to the mathematical operator of doing the multiplication. If you wanted to instead add them, you can add that plus in between the two. If you wanted to subtract them, I think you get the idea. You can do any operator. You can customize it. It does not need to be exactly as they wrote. You'll also notice something cool, that they have BODMAS, which is our PEMDAS, which is just saying first you do the parentheses and brackets, then you do the exponents or orders, and then you have division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So it's kind of like PEMDAS, but in England, they do BODMAS or something like that. So it's a little different acronym, but the idea is the same. So we've clicked the run button, and we now have hello world, welcome to Python, it's good at math, and we've shown that we can do an operator. Make sure you play with a couple of different calculations so you get a feel for how it works. Make sure that you don't forget uppercase and lowercase letters are important. So if I were to have typed in an uppercase P in Python and run it, I'm going to get an error because Python is being saved as the word Python with a lowercase letter, not as an uppercase letter. That will give us an error. Next step, Python has many modules that you can use in your code to help you perform tasks. It's like code that someone else wrote that you get to use. So the module that we're going to use under the import statement, so the code that someone else wrote, is from datetime. There's a library of code that someone else wrote called datetime. So there's all sorts of different commands that you're able to use, and we're just using some of them. So we've imported it up under the comment import on line 2, and anytime you write Python with a hashtag in front of it, it becomes a comment. These lines won't run, so it can be useful to help people read and understand your code. We learned about comments, and this comment just tells us that this is a good place to organize our code by putting all of our import statements up there. We'll have one more later. So when you run this code, nothing should change, and you should have the same output as the previous step. That's all true. We run this code, nothing changed, and yet we did import datetime. Let's actually go and use datetime now with a print statement. So F and then apostrophes, capital the, date and time is, datetime. Now this is something a lot of people forget, datetime.now, parentheses. When you use a function, you must say the function name and then add a set of parentheses. And then you also need that ending curly bracket. We run that, and the date and time is, this is exactly, according to the computer's clock, the date and time. And if you click run, you'll actually see this update if you look at the milliseconds and the seconds. So this is updating in real time, which is honestly pretty cool. Next step, so functions. Functions are blocks of reusable code that can be used to perform specific tasks, like a bucket. They need a name and the code that's going to go in it. So this is just an example. We'll notice that we have a comment for functions. This is a function you don't necessarily need to make. We'll delete it after, but it might be useful just to re-practice. So let's write def my underscore function, which is a bad name for a function just because it's not descriptive, followed by a colon. Then I'm going to hit enter, and you'll notice it automatically makes the indentation for you, which is 4 spaces right there. You can alternatively add that by hitting a tab key. X equals 1 plus 1. I'm going to print out, using the print function we've been practicing, what that X value is. Now, if I run my code right now, nothing is going to change because I've now defined a function. I've taught this block of reusable code, but we must call that function, invoke it to actually work by using its name. If I type my function followed by a set of parentheses, then we will end up seeing 2 because 1 plus 1 is 2, and we're printing that out. If I said 1 plus 11, I run that, I'll get 1 plus 11 and get 12. So this is just storing the value of X as a variable, just like world is storing it, and then we're printing it out down below. Again, this was just an example. We don't need to invoke my function. In fact, I'm simply going to get rid of it. So we are going to build a function called roll dice to roll a dice. We're going to create this function that prints out a number that we can choose, then call it at the bottom of our code. So we're going to go to where it says function definitions, type in define roll underscore dice followed by a set of parentheses and a colon. Now when I hit enter, again, it's going to automatically add that tab in. We're going to type out print parentheses f string you rolled a followed by a set of curly brackets 4. If I run this, nothing is going to occur because I've now defined what that block of reusable code does, but I have not used it. To use it, I need to call and invoke that function by writing roll dice, the function name, followed by a set of parentheses. Now I'm going to get you rolled a 4. Beautiful. Tip, you can use the tab key on your keyboard to insert 4 spaces. So instead of having to 1, 2, 3, 4, we can simply hit tab. And if you hold shift and tab, so we're right in front of the P, shift tab will uncreate that indent. So indent, unindent. Indent, unindent. When we invoke that function, roll dice, rolls a 4. Now notice that it's not very much of a dice roll yet. It's literally just rolling a 4 every time. As for debugging, make sure you have the function name, the set of parentheses, followed by a colon at the end. And when you're invoking that function, you have the function name followed by a set of parentheses. Next step, we are going to actually make this a dice roll. So there's another module, another thing we're going to use that someone else made called random. So I'm going to type down below from random, which is just another library of code that someone else wrote, import randint. So if I looked up random Python library, we can see that it's just something that someone else made. It's a bunch of code that we're going to be able to use in our Python program, and there's a lot of commands that we are able to use. We're just using some of them. So let's go use it. F string, you rolled a, and instead of 4, we're going to put random int 1, 6. So I'm going to delete that 4, randint, which stands for random integer, or essentially a random whole number. And what random whole numbers? We want to pick between the whole numbers 1 all the way up to 6. This is our range of random integers. Make sure you have a set of opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and you have a curly brackets to close the opening curly bracket. Otherwise, you might get an error and you need the closing apostrophe from the beginning. Every single time we click run, we are going to get a random number between 1 and 6. Let's say I change that between 1 and 6D. Now every time I run it, I'm getting a random number between 1 and 60. I got 60. How lucky. So we can now customize the starting value. Let's say I want to only roll really high. I'm setting the minimum to 59, so I'm going to be rolling only between 59 and 60. So this is the starting value of that range, and this is the ending value of that range. Test, click the run button. We did that, and we're moving on to the next step. We're going to keep updating our roll dice function. Multiplying strings. In Python, you can multiply strings, such as emojis or whole words, by a number so they print out several times. We're going to change it to store a variable and then multiply it, add in a line that says roll, we're saving a variable, roll is equal to randint 1, 6. So we run that and we have rolled a 3. Nothing's changed. It's just doing exactly what the print statement is. This is just saving a variable. And here's where the magic starts to happen. Print f string, you rolled a, and instead of randint 1 to 6, we are going to replace this with we rolled a roll and curly bracket, space, second set of curly bracket, fire, multiplied by roll end curly brackets. So if I run this now, I have 4, 5. You'll notice that whatever I roll, I'm getting a matching number of emojis directly after that, which is pretty cool. I can go look up a different emoji. Let's say I want, emoji. Let's say I want to use this ice cube emoji. So I'm going to copy that emoji and I'm going to paste that into my project saying that ice is equal to apostrophe, and now I can change that instead of fire to ice, run it, and now that ice cube is what's going to appear after that. Also on a PC, if you want to go find your own emoji, holding Windows period opens the emoji keyboard, and then you could type a word and it will search for that emoji. So let's say I had dog equal to, so now I can, instead of saying ice, I can also say dog. So a couple different methods. Now our dice is taking the amount that we pick, that random roll, we're saving it, and then we're just multiplying it by whatever emoji we want to appear. Pretty cool. Alright, next page, getting inputs. How we do that is we're going to update our roll dice function. So we're going to go to the beginning of roll dice, and we're going to type a new variable called max. So like we can increase the maximum number of what we're rolling. Max is equal to input, parentheses, followed by apostrophe, how many sides on your dice, question mark, colon, apostrophe, parenthesis. So hit enter, print f string, that is a D space, curly bracket, max, and curly brackets, followed by parentheses. So if I run this, how many sides on your dice? How many sides are on your dice? But nothing happens, and then if you have to physically, like on this side of the screen, you must take your mouse and click on it, and you'll see a little blinking cursor. It is waiting for you to input information. I'm going to input how many sides. Let's say 5 sides. Nothing changes, so I physically on my keyboard need to now click enter to input that information. Then the program continues and it says that is a D5, you rolled a 6. So input, it'll make a cursor appear and make you wait for input. Now theoretically, if I wanted to pause my program, I can literally just write input parentheses, it'll just wait, and you need to click enter before you see more, and then it will just keep running in the program. There's a question that appears, and then the information that we take in, we're saving as the word max. Then we're reusing it later so that it's kind of interacting with you, the user. Running this program, I have input now, how many sides? Let's say I say a 1,000-sided dice. If I hit enter, that's a 1,000-sided dice. I rolled a 4. That's suspicious. Let me do it again. I rolled a 1. That doesn't seem very likely to happen. The maximum my dice can roll is only 6 because we set it to 6. Now, we also show that you could increase it, but it's not taking into consideration the highest value of a dice. So we're going to then modify the next part so that it actually matches. Instead of having roll being a random number between 1 and 6, we're going to modify this line of code where we're saying roll is random integers between 1 and max. But we can't simply just say max, it's going to give us an error, and it says that it's a non-integer stop. So essentially, random integer is looking for 2 numbers between a first number and a second number. Now max is storing a number, but max itself is a word. So we have to tell the program that this is going to be a number, a integer. So we have to include the phrase int, that will then convert the text, the string, into a number that it's able to work with, an integer. So now I can say this should be a really big dice, 10,000. Let's go scroll up and see. We rolled a 1,177 followed by that many dog emojis. Int is going to convert that text into a integer that it can work with. And when you change that type of data, that's called type casting. So changing one type of data into another type of data. All right, we're at the final part of our program. I'm actually going to get rid of that input just so my program runs a little faster. Next up is sentence starter. We're going to practice those prints and we're going to use those emojis, add more print lines to our code. So you get to make whatever sentences you want. So let's say print f string. let's say you need at least 3 sentences down below. Instead of when you run your program, instead of getting wealthy as the word wealthy, you want it as a variable. Maybe you store that variable up above as wealthy is equal to, and let's go look what variables we could possibly search through. Maybe we use this little bag, and then maybe the $sign, and maybe a bank and a flying dollar bill. Head back to my project and say wealthy is equal to this. Instead of just saying the word wealthy, I can replace that with a variable. Now when I run it and I put my number, I'm going to get that as my variable that's storing the wealthy. So you can go ahead and add that as well instead of having to simply write the word wealthy if you'd like. So make sure you have 3 lines here. You'd need 1 more print statement, and that'll be your whole project. Done! You guys finished it! See you guys in the next video. Peace.